Okay, let me go over here. Okay, so I'm gonna make a really easy function, and all this function does is it flips a coin. It's just gonna choose at random either heads or tails. And then it's gonna return, either heads or tails. So oops. And then it's going to print that to the screen. So I'm going to say function coin toss. Oh, thank you. Okay, so I'm creating this function called coin toss. And what it's going to do is it's going to generate, I can generate a number between 1 and 0, or 0 and 100, or something like that, just so that I can determine whether or not it's over the halfway point or under the halfway point. So I'm going to say let toss equal random 100. So it's going to choose a number between 0 and 100. And then if that number is larger than 50, we're going to say it's heads. If it's lower than 50, we're going to say it's tails. So we have an equal chance that it's one or the other. So if toss is greater than 50, I need to make a variable up here that is going to contain the result. Or no. Well, let me hold off on that. Okay. If toss is greater than 50, return. So it's just the keyword return and then space, and then whatever you want it to return. So I'm going to return it a string that says heads. And then otherwise else, return tails. Okay. Nothing's gonna, I can run it, but nothing's gonna happen because I haven't tossed that coin or actually done anything with that. But now I'm gonna make a variable here called flip. Start it out as an empty string because I'm gonna draw it to the screen. Now I can say coin toss. Now I'm just going to run that, and it's going to return me a value, but it doesn't make sense just to say coin toss, just like it doesn't make sense just to type random something, because like you're not storing that to a variable or anything. So I'm going to say flip equals coin toss. And now we're going to console flip. Oh, we're getting, okay, here's the problem. It's doing it constantly in the draw loop. So let's make it so that it only runs that on a mouse pressed. That would make more sense, wouldn't it? Okay, so I'm going to take this code. And I'm going to put it in function mouse pressed. Okay, let's do that. So now when I click, I'm getting heads, tails, heads, over and over again. Tail, okay. Ooh, I was worried there for a second. Tails, heads. So now I could use that variable to, let's see, X size 60. I'm going to write it to the screen. So I'm going to say flip it divided by 2, height divided by 2. So now heads, tails, heads, tails, tail. I should have said tails. That's not right. Tails, heads, tails, heads, tails, tails, heads, heads, tails, over and over again. So this is just coin flip is just returning a variable, just like the random function does. So that's how return works. So it doesn't actually draw anything to the screen or make anything move or anything like that. It's just returning a value to you. Heads, tails, tails, heads, heads, tails, tails, heads. So this can be very useful. So I have an exercise for you that does exactly this. Exercise 22, February 23. You're going to make a a roll of the dice. So every time you click, it picks a random number between 0 and 6. And then returns that, and you're going to use that to print out the number to the page. So you're going to create, you need a variable that's going to store that number, just like I have the variable flip. And then you're going to somehow generate a random number between 1 and 6, and then return that number with the function, and that's on a mouse press, and that's what's going to change the variable and print out that number. And so you'll have the print, you'll have the function being called in mouse pressed, but you'll have the line that draws the number in the draw loop, just like I have here. Okay. And just a quick helpful hint, you might want to look up the function round, because when you generate a random number, you get a lot of decimal. You have a decimal point with a lot of numbers after it. But if you put it inside of the function round, it'll round it up or down, whatever it is. So That's really helpful. So, okay, go ahead and give that a shot. And just keep in mind that in this case, I'm returning a string. In your case, you won't be returning a string, you'll just be returning a number. So. It's pretty simple because you're just returning the number. You're not using the string, you're just returning the number. That's it. All you have to do is return. So you don't need this, not to need this at all. You don't need any conditional statements for this. No conditional statements, you're just returning the number. Yeah, it's because it starts out as an empty string. You have to click on it first. Okay, you don't need any conditional statements. All you do is return. Again, you don't need any conditional statements for this one. I did one on this one because I was testing to see if it was greater than 50. In this case, all you're doing is just returning the number. That's it. Oh, you're gonna you just send it back. So it just like random. It just gives you yeah. Oh, I think it's because you're using the roll twice. Oh. Now you just need the round number. Yeah, got it. So you, all you need to return is value between. So how do you get value between? You don't need this. So we need value between. So all we need to do now is just return that. So what do you to return? There's actually no, you don't need any conditional statement at all. All you need is just return. No, because we're just dealing with numbers here. We're not checking to see if it's water or anything. All we need to do is just. So now you created the function, haven't called it. Yeah, right. You want it. Yeah. Not doing something. Yeah. Now all you have to do is round that. We just say the word round. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. We're great for creating custom functions. Which what you do. Okay, so this is very important here. So basically, they're writing their own functions. So here, to see how it doesn't put this down here, I create a function called point cost. So you can create any function you want, you can use that whatever you want. This isn't going to work because that's not the name of the function. The name of the function point cost, not cost. Okay, so you have to match. So you don't actually need any additional statements on this. All you're really doing is returning 1 and 6. So you have to get just say randomly you're going to get a number 0 and 1. So if you just say random, you're getting a number between 1 number between. So how do you change that to get number? You'll have to do that eventually, but first you just have to get any number. No, you're just going to get a number. If you just do this with empty parentheses, all you're going to get is a number between 0 and 1. You want a number between 0 and 6. So what do you have to put in there to get a number between 0 and 6? Yeah, you can do that. You can put 0, 6, or you can just say 6. Or you could say 1 to 6. No, 1, 6.
Oh, found it.
Okay, exactly. Okay. So now all you have to do is return that number. It's just the word return and then whatever. You're returning that number. You store that number in the variable box, right? So what do you need to return? Right. So where you stored it in a variable box. Yes, we just return constant. So whenever you call that. Now, right now you're calling it, but it's not really doing anything. It's all it is that it just exists as a number. You need to store it in a variable to be able to do. So how do you put this, create a variable and put this inside the variable, just like we did. You're just gonna create a variable and you're gonna use this, whatever this is, you put it inside of that variable. No, you're gonna create a variable. Have you created a variable? You put it right in there. That was in the new variable. Something. You're gonna use. So with this, whatever you call it, it's gonna transform into the number that you have. Okay, so now whenever you like this right here, C plus equals random, blah, blah, blah. So random converts to a number. Same thing that's happening here. Toss, dice toss is number, and you're putting that number. So now we have a variable that equals the number that you want to print. Now all you have to do is print toss onto. So you bring that. And do the mouse press. So otherwise it's going to happen. You want to draw it to the screen. Values. What do you want to write? So what do you want to write? What is it that you want to hear? Yeah, so what variable can you use that? Variable equals Oh, you have. Now I have to bound. So the bound function, bound is equals to bound. That's the number inside. We go round it up to down. Okay, cool. You generally, oh, that's not the name of the function. It's just not random number, but just the word. And then if you don't put anything in parentheses, you're gonna get a number. But you're already doing that here. So here, I don't know why you're doing that. You've already done the right thing here. You're not returning the right thing. But yeah, take that out. And oh, I see what you were doing. You were calling them. I'm so sorry. You were doing, I thought you were calling Brandon. That's because Brandon doesn't go there. I'm so sorry. No, sorry. You're calling, you're doing it right. I thought you were trying to need the. Okay, so all you need to do is return numbers. We're not dealing with strings here, we're just dealing with numbers. So don't, no quotation marks, just the variable. There you go. There you go. So now you can use the round function to round it up and down. So just type it round, and we put the number in. Now we need to put it around it. Yeah. Oh, great job. Okay, so just make sure you submit that. Put it into open processing. Okay, that went faster than I thought. That's really cool. So we only have one exercise left. So now what I'm going to do is show you how to pass in variables. Okay, so we just made a function that said like roll dice, and then it had parentheses, and there was nothing inside of those parentheses. But we know that there are functions where you have to put stuff inside the parentheses. So if you say rect, you have to give it 4 values that are predetermined, but you have to look them up to know, what those 4 values are, right? Any function that you need, you gotta go to reference and say, okay, this requires 3 values, X, Y, width, or something like that. So now I'm going to show you how you can create a function that passes parameters in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a function that all it does is it adds up 2 numbers. It takes 2 numbers, you have to pass 2 numbers into it, and then it returns the sum of those numbers. So I need a variable to store that. So I'm going to say let sum. Okay, so I'm going to down here, I'm going to say function add numbers. Okay, so what I need to do here is put some sort of temporary variables that's going to store the number that's being passed in. So in this case, I'm going to say add number. So I'm going to say number 1 and number 2. These are temporary variables. They're only available inside of these curly brackets. You can't use them anywhere else in the program. They're only available, they're just holding on to that number for you so that you can do something with it. That's all they do. They're just storing that number inside. So what all I need to do here is say let's add equals num1 plus num2. Okay, add num1 plus num2. And then I'm just going to return add. Okay, so I've created the variable, but I haven't called it anywhere. I'm going to call it on a mouse press. So now when I call this function add number, I'm going to give it 2 values. So when I call that, it's taking the first number and sticking it inside of, these are called arguments and these are called parameters. So it's taking the first argument and storing it inside the first parameter. And then it's taking the second argument and storing it inside the second parameter. It's passing it in into these temporary variables. So now I'm going to say console.log. Oh, I just did something wrong. I called add number, but I didn't actually store it inside a variable. It just added the number, but I didn't do anything with that number. It just added it and it's just sitting there in the Dax universe. So I'm going to say sum, that variable I created, sum equals add number. I'm going to say return sum. Oh, I already did return. Sorry. Console.log sum and function mouse press, and I get an error. Okay, what's going on? Add number is not defined. Oh, numbers, plural. Okay, mouse pressed 5. So every time I press the mouse, I'm getting the number 5. So I can say plus 10, run it, and now I'm getting 12 every time I click. So that's how you pass one number. That's how you pass a parameter into an argument into a parameter. Does that make sense? So let me put that into a more practical example. A kind of pointless one, but I'm going to create a variable called draw square. This is a totally pointless function because we already have something that draws a square. But I'm going to pass in 4 variables. I'm going to say x, y, width, and height. Okay, those are the temporary variables that's going to store that. And then I'm going to say rect x, y, width, height. Okay, so pretty boring, right? Totally pointless. But just to demonstrate, now I'm going to say, now when I'm pressing the function, actually it's not so pointless because if we pass in random values, that's really useful. So I'm going to say here, draw square and I need to give it 4 values. So I'm gonna say width divided by 2, height divided by 2. And then I'm gonna give it random width and height values. So I'm gonna say random uh, 10 through 100 for the width and random 10 through 100 for the height. Oh, I need one more. Paren. Okay, so it is. Oh, I gotta turn off the background to be able to see it. So I'm getting different squares. So I made a function that draws something given certain parameters. Actually, the way I want to do this, I did this backwards. Actually, what I want you to do is this. Oh no, I did it right. I did it right. Never mind. Never mind. Look at that. So I'm calling that function and it's so I'm not returning anything. The next exercise, you don't have to worry about returning any values. You're just creating something that's going to draw something, and you're going to pass in some values, and one of them is going to be a random number. So what I want you to do is go back. Remember when we made that target, when we first learned about variables, we made a sketch that drew a target to the screen, and it drew it at different sizes depending on one variable that controls the size of the target. So I want you to write a function that draws a target on a mouse crest, but when you call that function, you're going to pass it in a random number that's going to control the width of the target. So you can go, you can just write this over again, or you can go find your code for the target. But every time I'm calling, every time I press, every time I press the mouse, it's calling something like target random 10 through 100 through 150. I don't know why I'm bothering with that, but your code will look something like this. When you call the function, it's going to require one argument that's going to be passed into the parameter. Okay. Okay. Okay, go. Oh my God. So that is different. But the point is the passive. Yeah, or maybe it's all of this that does this. And if you have one guy that's controlling um, the so what you need to do is choose that into random number. So copy this out. And so what you want to do is put something inside the tree. Yeah, it's good. And use you actually already have so now you can use that variable. Yeah. So 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 now now all of the functions that you just created. So all you have to do now is press this first one. All the draw target functions. Circle is just a temporary. Well, you want to fire out the function draw target, so you can just put that in there. And because you have one thing inside of those parentheses, you one thing inside these. You're gonna, you want to pass in. Small to large. We could. Yeah, no, not random inference. How do you call it? The word random. Yeah. Oh, you mean, this. Yeah. Yeah, those all have to be mouse. You're drawing it right where, no, I'm sorry, not mouse press. Mouse accent. Yeah, but you want to draw it right where you click. Don't forget, you need to use mouse X and mouse Y so that it draws right where you're clicking. And if you actually, if you want to be more specific, you could have it look like targets, mouse X, mouse Y, and then random, so that you're passing in the location as well as the size. That would be even better. We'd love it if you did that. So that when you call it, it looks something like this. So you're just saying target here at this size, here at this size, here at this size, here at this size. That would be even better if you wrote it so that you have to pass in 3 variables, 3 values, arguments, whatever you want to call it. That would be ideal. Mhm. Oh, okay. So, yeah. Oh, wait, no. Yeah. It's like, because you're not actually passing in any variable to this part. What I want you to do is write it so that all the function target, that's when you determine the size you want it to be. So that's when you would pass in. So inside those parentheses, it would look something like that. You don't have to put mouse X and mouse Y in there because you already have a function, that's fine. But you need to pass in a random number when you call that function. That's kind of okay. So now you need random number down here. So you need to declare right here that you're going to want this function to receive 1 parameter. So you need to put a temporary variable inside those parentheses. That's what you're going to use to determine it. Instead of determining the random number, instead of picking that line, it's going to, you're going to use the temporary variable that you put in there. So No, and it's just gonna be 50 to 50%. One to pass and then put a range in there. So every time you call that function, you're passing in some sort of value into this function. So now you just need to put some sort of temporary variable there that's going to hold that random number. So inside those parentheses, just put some sort of variable, just call it whatever you want. W is fine. Cool. So now, whenever this gets called, that random number is going to be stored in a variable called W. Yeah. Here. So that random number will go to. Okay. I see you. Yeah. Okay, cool. Now you need to set it up so that there's you've got a variable called simple W, simple Y. Okay, so in order to use those variables, we don't want this anymore. Because we wanted to draw where the mouse is put. So in order to use these variables, what we want to do is, yeah, we've got it right there. Perfect. Okay, so whenever draw target is called, it's going to pass 3 numbers. Up here, you need to put 3 temporary variables that are going to receive those numbers. So we're going to put 3 variables separated by commas. First variable is going to receive this number. Second variable is going to receive this number. The third variable is going to receive this number. So you need to declare 3 variables there. And this is good because you already have 3 variables that you're using. So these values get pumped into there. You're passing those numbers over to the function. Yeah, so every time it gets called, it's giving it the location and the width. Yeah, just like yeah, I wasn't doing it. Yeah. Okay. Do you have your code from the target exercise? Yeah. So all you need to just grab all of this code right here, fill down, and paste it into your job target. Yeah. There we go. Okay, so that's going to draw a target. So now what you want to take a look at is right now, if you press the draw target, it's going to pass in 3 numbers. Okay. Right now it's not going to do anything because we haven't declared these variables. No, not that. So go back. Okay, so if you're going to pass in a number or a value, you need to put a temporary variable in here to receive that value. So if we passed in one number here, we would need one variable there to receive that value. And then you can use that variable down here. So right now you have it, so it's passing in 1, 2, 3 values. So you need to put 1, 2, 3 variables in there. And the first one will get the first value, the second one, the third, the second one, the second, and the third one, the third. They'll transfer in that order. So, and luckily you already have 3 variables here that you're using. So you can just use those since you already have them there. Oh, you have to, oh, you have done that. Here we go, yeah, or the background, yeah. There you go, got it. This is the last exercise, so if you get through this, you're free to go. Just as a reminder of what the exercise is that you're creating a function that is going to draw some 4 versions of something to the screen in like a grid. Okay. And every time that function goes off, something about that design is going to change randomly. So you'll need to create a function where you pass in some values. So you'll pass in the X and Y location, and you'll pass in some sort of random number that's going to do something to your little design. Does that make sense? So it's very similar to this line right here. So you might have your function name is like gobbledygook, and then you pass in an X. It wouldn't be mouse and Y, it would be the position on the screen. And then you pass in maybe a random number, maybe 2 random numbers, maybe 3 random numbers, whatever you're going to use to modify your design. So that's the goal. It's at the end to just have one line of code that draws it, and that's it. You don't have to do it on a mouse press. You can do it on, ideally, just make it so that every time it runs, you might have to put a no loop function in there so it doesn't like flicker. But every time it runs, it draws a different version of each of I call them sprites, different version of your sprites. And like I said, there's an example of this down here under sprites. So you can take a look at it. So right here in this, I'm passing in an X, a Y, and 2 random numbers. And then down here in Spark, X, Y, a width and a height, and then a distance and a C. I guess C means color. And then I'm using those to control the outcome. So every time I run this, I get a little different design. Okay. And that's it. That's all I got for you today. Did you get it going? Huh? Okay, cool. So you don't need anything like this. You want to pass in the number, not generated in the code. So right now you're passing X and Y, and which is great. store the random numbers that you're gonna put in. Yeah, cool. So you want to get rid of that because yeah, you don't even need these in here. Yeah. So, and then that's right. Okay, you want to change this X and Y because we need this X and Y here. Okay, and then on mouse versus that target. So you don't need any of this equals or anything like that. You're just calling. You don't need this. You're just passing in. And then you're just passing in a random number. So you don't need, I mean, you could set a variable first and then pass it in, or you could just put random values right there. So instead of seeing a list W, just put in a random, yeah. So you don't use that. Got it. Yeah. Cool. Right place. That's good. So now we don't need these variables up to be up here anymore because we're going to yeah, we don't do that. Okay. Yeah, X and Y, and you want to control the this. For sure. Okay. Great. Okay. So those are your temporary variables. You've got this here. Perfect. Okay, that's it. So target, you're passing in 1, 2, 3 numbers. And here you're receiving 1, 2, 3 numbers. So now you just need to modify all of this. You're going to use these variables instead of these variables. Yeah, because that's how you get the different sizes. And then we see that one they want is actually oh, see how you ended when the draw loop right there, yeah. And then you're gonna get rid of that one. And, oh yeah, no, that's fine. Okay, now just turn off the background. There you go. Okay. Yeah. Four versions, yeah, some design, 1, 2, 3, 4. Any design you want, yeah. Like that's too weird to be abstract, whatever you want. Just that each one is a little bit different every time you run it. Oh, the next one?
Uh,
Okay. Oh, you got it. You just need to round the number now.
well, and then return it to.
You did that though. Yeah. Oh, you're not returning it. I see what you mean. So,
I remember.
yeah. Exactly. And then we gotta put. No, you're just returning numbers. You already declared it a random number. Now you're just returning it. You don't need. It's just a variable.
Okay.
So you set it to your random number and you returned it. And then now. And now you need to call that you're doing it in Raj. Don't want to do that. You want to be on the mouse fast.
And I'm call change, right? Call.
Right here, so you have that you're gonna call the function in the mouse fast. You don't want it to happen every time you do a loop where you're just gonna do a number.
Okay.
So here is where you're going to call the function. So you don't want that right there.
Yes.
Or that, or that one right there. You know, you don't want that. Because you've got something that already does that. This is already doing that for you. So now you're calling choose, but you're not doing anything with it right now. You're just generating the number, but you're not storing it in the variable. And what we want to do is we want this variable to equal whatever choose,
Which variable?
the select variable
Oh,
that you're drawing. We want that to equal whatever choose produces. So you're going to need to say select equals I. Equals choose. Choose is generating the number and then putting it here, and that's transferring that here. There you go. Yeah. So now you just need to round it.
That's a function.
Yeah, just the word round and then a number inside of it. So you could round it there, you could round it. So you need to do it where that period exists. So before choose, for the word choose, right there, round, and then parentheses. So it's going to take that number and round it. Yeah, that's cool. Next time you're playing a game, you don't have any dice, you can just go on your computer and everyone will be really impressed. They just ripped up a now.
That's not true. They'll look at you the way everyone looks at me and say you're crazy.
Yeah. Impressed or crazy, or both.
Oh, Rusty, I'm doing the presentation with the thing for the under.
Oh, for the club?
Like, yeah, like in like 20 minutes. Is there anything particular you want me to mention besides the normal stuff? Or I should have asked sooner. I'm doing the multimedia aspect because there's no one we got to do it for, and I have
Yeah.
lots of hopefully to talk about it.
Okay.
Nothing.
Just the fact that we just want screenshots and the link. If they don't have a link.
Oh yeah,
that's
good point. It's
okay.
kind of.
Yeah. 'cause
I'm
they're-
covering that though, making sure they know how to do the links because a lot of times they just do the print PDFs as interactive and the
Yeah.
links won't work.
Right, exactly. And then we have to copy and paste, so.
Yeah. So if they
Which
just added.
isn't the end of the world, but, and then also tell them that, if they have a work in progress, like just a mock-up, it's okay to submit just a mock-up.
Like
if-
interactive
if they're
design,
not
because so much of it
finished.
is how you're doing it.
Yeah, that, how you think about, the design part is important, not just how you code it. Because a lot of the classes don't involve any coding, but you need to know that, you know, you're able to understand interfaces and things like that.
All right, so the examples I'm providing are also my weirder, more fun things in order to be like, see, we do fun stuff.
Bye-bye.